Hi, how are you doing? Good to see you here. So, the plan of action is to go through all of the Discworld in tier order. And yeah, please pitch in as I'm going along. And hopefully, I've got a good idea of where I'm planning on putting most of these, but we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I can be quite easily swayed if needs be. So, without further ado, let me see if I can share my screen so you can not just see me, but also the screen here. And no, not that. And share my screen. There is a way of doing this. I did play with this before and I could figure it out. Okay. You can tell I can't. You can tell I don't do this sort of thing very often. Right. Present. Share my screen. And I want to share that one. Is that working? Can you now see the tier list and also my ugly face at the same time? I'm going to assume that the answer is yes, unless somebody else pitches in and tells me that they're seeing another black screen. Okay, so like I said, I have a pretty good idea of where I'm planning on putting most of these. But that being said, I'm not ruling out the possibility of changing my mind as I'm going along. So let's just make sure I can. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my second screen, getting through. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to do the Discworlds in order on here. They're not the tier making tool that I did uploaded all the files, and it didn't put them in the order that I put them in. And then I've got up to about Jingo is in publication order, and then they're all a bit of a mess after that. So I'm going to see how I get on with them, and I might have to do a bit of adjusting on the fly as I'm going along. One other thing as well is this is kind of a bit of a celebration of the fact that I've been just over a year on BookTube, and I've also got over 1,000 subscribers in the last couple of weeks as well. So I'm kind of celebrating both of those things on here at the moment. So while the main focus of this is doing the tier list, if you have any other questions and things that you want to ask me as we're going through this, please feel free, type them in the comments, and then I'll do my best to answer them if they're not too ridiculously personal. Actually, if they are personal, I'll probably answer them anyway. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to start with Strata. So if you're familiar with the Discworld, you might not be familiar with Strata, and that was one of Terry Pratchett's earliest books. And Strata was pretty much book zero for Discworld. It's a sci-fi story. It is kind of a parody of Larry Niven's Ringworld series, and it's basically it's a science fiction story where the main characters discover a world that's in the shape of a disc. So you can see that he's kind of starting out some of these proto ideas at the time. This was back when he was still working full time as well as doing writing, and it felt very, very Douglas Adams influenced. It's a really decent start for a young science fiction and fantasy author, but it's an interesting curio rather than being a really good Discworld book. So I'm going to have to put that one into D tier for now. It may go up a little bit higher as things go along, but I think I'm probably going to put that on in D tier. So now we actually get to the start of the true Discworld books, and the first one is The Colour of Magic. The Colour of Magic is, even though it's the first one, it's never the one I recommend people start with, because Pratchett got much better at writing as he was going along. And The Colour of Magic, it's not really a single novel. It's almost 4 short novellas in one. And it's introducing the Discworld and some of the characters on the Discworld. But what it actually kind of feels like more than anything else is a bit of a sort of a Douglas Adams style parody of the sword and sorcery genre. So things like the Conan the Barbarian tales and things like that. It feels like a version of that rather than what the sort of high fantasy that Discworld actually ended up becoming. It is Genesis for this, and but it isn't the best by any stretch of the imagination. It is better than Strata, but I don't think I'm going to put it any higher than D tier. We're still in the early days of Discworld, and I'm not going to put it up any higher than that one. All right, so moving on, the next one is Book 2, The Light Fantastic. That is one of the very few direct sequels in the Discworld series. They all sort of happen roughly on the same timeline, but there's actually very, very few sequels that are. One is a direct follow-on from the story of the last one. The Light Fantastic is one of those. It's the second of the Rincewind and Two Flower books. So Two Flower is the very first Discworld tourist, and Rincewind is the wizard who is showing him around, and he's a kind of a failed wizard who specializes mostly in running away from things. So The Light Fantastic, it is a step up in quality, I think, from The Color of Magic. It is one coherent story over the course of it, and there's a few things that are introduced in this one for the first time as well that actually become mainstays of the disc. It is, interestingly, it's the one where the librarian gets turned into an orangutan. That is something that happens early in the book. It's also the first one to include, excuse me, sorry about that. It's also the first one to include the character of Conan the Barbarian as well. The city of Ankh-Morpork got introduced in The Color of Magic, and we get to see a little bit more of it and hear a little bit more about it in The Light Fantastic. I think The Light Fantastic is a step up. We still haven't reached the really, really great heights that the Discworld becomes, so I'm going to pop it into... Oh, sugar. What's going on here? I'm going to pop it into C tier. Oh, and it's just reset my page and it's moved them all back all over the place again. Anyway, I don't know why he keeps doing that. So now I have to try and find The Light Fantastic. There we go. It's here. So I'm going to put it into C tier. Okay. No major arguments with my choices so far from anyone? Okay. I'll take the silence as a no on that one. Yeah, so B-Cycling saying, okay, I think I can actually show this on the screen now. Haha. Yes. So pretty good parodies. Not Discworld yet. They're not as distinctly Discworld as the later books. I would absolutely agree with that. I think the thing that really sets them apart and where you really notice the difference between the later Discworlds is actually the way that Death is portrayed in the story, because Death as a character I don't think really properly comes into his own until after after at least The Light Fantastic. You kind of see it a little bit in Equal Rites, and he's very much the character he becomes when we get to Mort. Okay, so the third book on that, thanks for that, B. And the third one is Equal Rites. Let's see if I can find it on the list here. That's Weird Sisters. And I will say one thing about the old style of illustrations on the covers done by Josh Carpe is that it does become a bit of noise on the screen when I'm trying to search through them and find the right one. So Equal Rites. Again, Equal Rites is where it's another step up, but I still don't think we're quite where we were in the likes of where it starts to get good as it gets later on. Equal Rites is the story of Escarina Smith, who inherits a wizard's staff and is essentially a girl who is more suited to learning wizarding magic as opposed to witchcraft. She is taken under the wing by the witch Granny Weatherwax, and that's the first appearance of Granny Weatherwax. It's kind of the first of the witches series, but but in this, Granny Weatherwax is the only witch that's in it. It has one of my favorite lines in all of the Discworld. It's about when it's a pun about the fact that when Granny Weatherwax moved into Ankh-Morpork with Esk, she got lodgings next to a reputable dealer in stolen goods because she heard good fences make good neighbors. I mean, that's proper dad level joke on that one, and I have to respect it. I do like that a lot. I still don't think Equal Rites is quite up there. I'm tempted to put it in B, but I'm going to leave it at the top of C for now. That might change as we go along with this. Okay, so next we are moving on to Mort. And I think most people would probably agree, although, you know, if anyone wants to shout out and tell me otherwise, I think most people would probably agree that Mort is where the Discworld really starts to come into its own. And Mort is probably the first really great Discworld book. So this is the story of how Death takes an apprentice called Mort. The intention is to take him in under his wing, and largely he's brought in with the idea of that possibly he might end up marrying Death's adopted daughter, Isabel. This is the first of the Death sub-series, and it's the first time we really see Death as a character who is who we can identify as the sort of apart from humanity, but still a guy doing his job, has a lot of compassion and kindness to it, but he's still quite distant and aloof in a lot of ways, which is the character of Death that we all get to know and love over the course of the series. And this is the first really time that we see that character. Oh, I'm going to move. This is definitely going up, but the question is, do I put it in A tier or S tier? Ooh, I'm going to be mean and put it in A tier for now, because I'm going to have to be careful, because I'm a Discworld fan, and if you slap a Terry Pratchett's name on the cover and the words "a Discworld novel" on it, then I will defend any book. I defend A Court of Thorns and Roses and say how awesome it is and how a great parody of the romantasy genre it is if it said Terry Pratchett. So I'm biased. I know I am. So I have to be really quite careful and try to be objective. And can I just say, when I say that these tiers are S, A, B, C, and D, D does not mean it's a bad book. I don't think there's maybe one or two, but I don't think many Discworld books dip below 3 stars. There's a couple that are sort of 2.5, 2 stars, but not many of them. And yeah, I'm going to have to be careful. Otherwise, I'm going to stick them all up in the S tier as the biased one I am. So I'm going to put Mort in A tier for the time being. Yeah, B-Cycling, I'm with you on that one. A tier Pratchett is beer tier for anyone else. Well, okay, Susan, why be objective? Because if otherwise that this is going to be a joke, and everything would go up into S tier, and I'd just be saying, well, these are all clearly amazing. They're all number one, and this would be it'd be a really fast stream, but it'd be a really boring one. So, right, and this is where I start embarrassing myself by saying that I kind of start to forget some of the orders in this. Okay, so next on the list, we have got Sorcery. Now, this is where my objectivity is really going to kick in, because I'm going to be honest, Sorcery is probably my least favorite of the Discworld books. Sorcery, to me, it's the third Rincewind book, and it's the story of, on the Discworld, the number 8 is a mystical number. So you've got the 8th son of an 8th son ends up being a wizard. Esk in Equal Rites was the 8th offspring, but a daughter of an 8th son. But wizards are encouraged to not marry, and because the 8th son of an 8th son of an 8th son becomes a sorcerer, which is a source of magic. And I gotta be honest, it's got the story of Coin, who comes to Unseen University, who's trying to claim his birthright as the leader of all wizards and kicking off this sort of magical war. And then Rincewind has to run off with the artifact that would make him Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University, which is the Arch-Chancellor's hat. So imagine kind of the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter, except a bit more bit more of a psychopath. I'm gonna be honest, I don't like Sorcery that much. I think all of the things that Sorcery does has been done. It's kind of like he's riffing on both interesting times, and not interesting times, but the light fantastic and equal rights, and he's kind of doing a mishmash of them, and it's not as good as either of those. So Sorcery is the first place where I think this Discworld starts to take a little bit of a dip, and it is, I would say, probably my least favorite of them, so it's going to live in D tier for now. Okay. So, Alice, very good to see you on the stream. Equal rights is one of my favorite quotes as well, but it's the one about Granny Weatherwax not being lost and rather that everything else is in the wrong place. Yeah, I kind of like that one as well. Yeah, that tells you a lot about what you need to know about Granny Weatherwax. I think a lot of people say that she doesn't really come into her own as a character and isn't as fully formed until you see her in Weird Sisters. I'm not certain I really agree with that. I think she is a very strong self. There's a very firm understanding of what she is and who she is right from the get-go, and that encompasses what Granny Weatherwax is like as a character. Okay, moving on. Speaking of the witches and Granny Weatherwax, we have got Weird Sisters. Now, Weird Sisters is pretty much the Discworld doing Shakespeare. So there is the story of the murder of the king of Lancre and the succession and the son who is hidden away, and he becomes an actor, and there's lots of riffs on Macbeth and Hamlet. And if you are a fan of Shakespeare and you know Macbeth and Hamlet pretty well, then you're probably going to enjoy Weird Sisters a lot. I think that, and as well as that, this is where we really get to see the witches as a coven for the first time. So we get Granny Weatherwax, but this is where we also get to meet Nanny Ogg for the very first time, who is one of my favorite characters in the Discworld. She is just spectacular. And also Margaret Garlick, the third of the coven. So for me, Weird Sisters is gonna go up into, I think that's gonna go up into A tier as well. It's pretty damn good. I like Weird Sisters a lot. Now I just need to find it on here. Now that everything's moved around all over the place. Wow, this must be a fantastic live stream for everyone. Just watch me not being able to see Weird Sisters, which is right there. Do I prefer to Mort? That is the question now. I think I probably prefer Mort to Weird Sisters. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Okay. So Susan's saying that Weird Sisters is the start of genius level, in my opinion. When shall we meet again? I can do next Tuesday. Yeah, my youngest was doing Hamlet for his in school, or not Hamlet, but some of Macbeth in school. So she read that scene in Macbeth, and then I read her that scene in Weird Sisters as well, and she thought that was pretty damn funny. Okay, then. So next. Oh, yeah, he was funny, wasn't he? All right, so next we have got Pyramids. Pyramids, okay. I think this could be... This is going to be C tier as well. I'm not a huge fan of Pyramids. I like the stuff with the Assassin's Guild. Do I like it more than Light? I do like it more than Light Fantastic. But so Pyramids is the story of Tepic, the prince of a country called Jelly Baby, which is kind of this analog of ancient Egypt, where they've got pyramids and gods and all of that sort of thing there. And Tepic is in the Assassin's Guild, and where he is getting his education, and then he comes home. I quite like the bits at the start where they're talking about the Assassin's Guild. I don't enjoy the part in Jelly Baby quite so much. Seeing some of the gods come to the earth is, yeah, I like that. Getting to see the country of Phoebe, which is kind of the ancient Greece of the Discworld, that's fun as well. However, but beast cycling, that's a valid point. It is divisive, but the camel is great. The camel, if memory serves, is called You Bastard. And he is a mathematical genius. And most of that mathematical genius he uses into plotting the trajectories of the spit that he's going to be launching at people. I'm not a massive fan of pyramids. I liked it well enough. But I liked it more than Light Fantastic. It didn't like it as much as Equal Rights. I think that's a fair assessment of it. Okay, so moving along. The next one on the list is... the next one is Guards. And that is the first of the books in the City Watch series. And... no prizes for guessing where I'm putting this one. I absolutely adore Guards. I think it is wonderful. It is, anytime anyone is interested in trying out a Discworld book, Guards is always the one I recommend. It is just spectacular, and it's doing a couple of things. It's going back to some of that parody that we looked at early on with the Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic, where it's deconstructing that whole thing in the sort of hero's journey, where it's looking at that whole story, but from the perspective of the guys who are on the lowest rung of the watch of the City Watch. They are the night shift of the City Watch. There is 3 of them at the start of it. There is Captain Vimes, who is a man struggling with alcoholism. There is Nobby Nobbs, who is probably more criminal than most of the criminals that they lock up. And there is also Sergeant Colon, who is like basically every stereotypical sergeant you've ever seen in any media whatsoever. And they're pretty jaded by life, and they don't really do much apart from, they stand around and stop bridges from being stolen by, being in the general vicinity. And, but then Carrot, their newest corporal, arrives, this young, charismatic and enthusiastic watchman, and immediately sort of throws a cat amongst the pigeons. And also there is dragons in it as well. And it is absolutely fantastic. I love Guards. It is one of my favorite of the Discworld books, and immediate S tier. So we've got a bit of an agreement that it is going to be S tier book. Yeah, I think I agree. Obviously, I agree. But if anyone wants to come on here and argue with me about Guards not being an S tier book, then feel free. You ain't going to get anywhere with me, though. Right. So, where we got next? We have got... Eric. All right. Now, Eric's a bit of an interesting one for me. Because... it didn't when I first read it, it didn't really make much of an impression. It was, it's Eric. The gag of Eric is what you see on the cover, is the fact of Faust has been scratched out and Eric has been put into it instead. And Eric is the story of a young demonologist who wants to call up a demon in order to have his wishes granted. He tries to call up a demon, and he ends up summoning Rincewind instead. When I first read it, it's very short, this one. And when I first read it, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I thought an awful lot more fondly of it this time when I read it. There was some things in there that I really quite liked. It was like the whole thing about their version of Helen of Troy, who at the end of their Trojan siege, the face that launched 1,000 ships had aged 10 years and had a few kids in the meantime, and that was fun. There's the manager of hell, the High Lord of Hell, who basically runs hell as with all sorts of corporate initiatives and customer service surveys and things like that, which is more torturous to the people in hell, including the demons, than anything else. And the other thing I learned about this time around is that it actually works best as the illustrated version, because it was originally written to be illustrated by Josh Kirby. So the one that you see here, this one is the one that most people are familiar with, but there is an illustrated version with some gorgeous artwork in it. And I was all set to put Eric in C tier. I'm kind of edging towards B tier though on this one. I don't think it's going to stay high up in B tier for very long, and it might not live in B tier forever. But I'm going to go with B tier on Eric for controversial choice, perhaps putting it over something like Equal Rites. But I did actually really quite enjoy it this last time that I read it. Right. So what do we get after Eric? We have got, why is that hiding my screen? Moving Pictures. Now, Moving Pictures, I like an awful lot. It is, it's a lot of fun. I'm a bit of a movie nerd as well, and this, if you know anything at all about sort of golden age of Hollywood and the early studio system and sort of Louis B. Mayer and all of these different people who were creating these big studio epics for MGM and things like that, and looking at some of the early hit films and things like that, Moving Pictures is just stuffed full of gags, and it is really, really funny. The thing I think holds Moving Pictures back a little bit is, well, it's two things. Firstly is the fact that I don't like the main character as much. He's the Discworld's version of a movie star, so he's kind of a bit of a lazy, egotistical asshole, and that's especially noticeable when he's as mean as he is to Gaspode the dog. And Gaspode is a character who crops up. He was brought in Moving Pictures as a talking dog, and it was kind of a one and done gag. But then Gaspode ended up making a comeback and being able to speak again in later books. And he's a fantastic character. He's kind of this street smart mongrel, and it's such an enjoyable character. And to see Victor, the main character in Moving Pictures, being horrible to him, don't like that. I also think that the ending of Moving Pictures kind of lets it down a little bit. There's a whole trope that Pratchett uses very early on where it's all about people are doing things that are poking at the holes in reality and letting the creatures from the dungeon dimensions in, and that gets kind of overdone. And I think by the time we get to Moving Pictures, we're on about the third or fourth time that this has happened, and he kind of uses it as a bit of a reset button, that's where you can bring something in like Moving Pictures, but then at the end of Moving Pictures it's gone again. And he does that a few times in the early Discworld books, and those are the things that hold it back a little bit. However, I have to say, like B-cycling, I know Moving Pictures was the first Discworld book I read, so you'll always have a soft spot for it. Yeah, you're going to find that when I get to the first Discworld book I've read, then that's going to probably disproportionately shoot up the tier list as well. Susan is saying that that she struggles with that one. They just don't get it. I do get it. And it's because I'm a real sort of nerd for old Hollywood and movies and things like that. And I can imagine if you're not, and you don't get what most of the references are, that it could be, a bit turgid to get through. I'm going to say that I'm going to give, does it go up as high as A tier? That's the question. Do I put it up into A tier? Or do I leave it in B? I'm I'm going to put in A tier for now. And I'll see where I get after that. Yeah, I'll put moving pictures up into A tier for now. Right. Let's see if I can find it on here. And there we are. Moving pictures. Pop that up into A tier. Right. So we're about a quarter of the way through. We've got about 10 of these down now. Here we go. Ellis is saying that I did enjoy moving pictures, especially with its depiction of old Hollywood, but I agree that the dungeon dimensions does change up the end a bit much. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It lets it down a little bit, and it is starting to be a little bit on the tropey side of that stage. Right. Now, this one is a bit of... the next one that's coming up is Reaper Man. And Reaper Man is a bit of an odd one for me, because for one of the things about Reaper Man is it has what you might not necessarily realize at the time, but Reaper Man is a very big turning point for a lot of stuff in the Discworld. It's the first time we get the Unseen University with the same... It's the first time we get staff recurring at the Unseen University. Up until this point, every single time we've seen Unseen University, the staff gets, they get wiped out at the end, and there's always this conversation about how the wizards are sort of killing each other up on the way up to the top. Reaper Man, it returns the characters who are the Wizards of Unseen University from moving pictures. So this is the first time that they recur, and this is where we start to see a set series of them. So we get Mustrum Ridcully, the Arch Chancellor. We get to see the Bursar. We get to see the Dean and the Chair of Indefinite Studies. And a lot of this actually centers around a character called Wendell Poons, who is who is a wizard who dies. Well, is supposed to have died. But basically the story of Reaper Man is Death getting the sack. We see the Auditors of Reality. They essentially appeal to the broader death of the entire universe that says that Death now needs to go because he's becoming too human. So Death goes and retires, and he goes and works on a farm. With the scythe, because he's quite good with the scythe, but it leaves a gap then before a new death arrives, and as a result, all sorts of things are happening. So, as well as it being the first one where we get the wizards returning, it's the first one where we start to see undead characters in the Discworld. It's the first one where we get to see the death of rats. Who the Grim Squeaker, who comes in because he is one of the aspects of death. Death splits into a lot of different aspects, and most of them get absorbed back into him at the end. Like there's a death of fleas and a death of dogs and all of this sort of thing. But the death of rats manages to hang on and manages to avoid being reassimilated back into death. There's also one of the things I realized quite recently as well is that, and I can't remember the character's name, but when we get onto Raising Steam, the engineer who creates the first steam engine, his father is in Reaper Man, and creates this sort of threshing, this automatic reaping machine. And there's a whole sort of aside where he kind of thinks that how might he be able to improve its efficiency, and he kind of looks at the boiling kettle, and we actually get almost a nod to what Raising Steam is going to be all the way back in Reaper Man. It's also where he comes up with the joke of the amazing Morrison is educated rodents as a con artist who's doing the Pied Piper of Hamelin thing. So Reaper Man is massively important. However, there are two parallel stories in it. There's the death story, and then there's this other story about how, because of the excess life energy, because no one's doing the job of death anymore, there is this sort of carnivorous city spawning, and it starts off with things like snow globes, which turn into shopping trolleys, and it's almost like this anthill thing that feeds off of cities, and that story I would say is a lot less successful. When I was rereading it this time around, I was really enjoying the death stuff, both stuff with the city and that whole carnivorous shopping mall or whatever it was. That I didn't feel worked quite so well. Oh, yes. Thank you, B. Ned Simnel is the dad in Reaper Man. Yes, thank you very much. So, and B is also saying Reaper Man is the second one I read and said that one had you hooked. Yeah, I could see why it did. I like Reaper Man a lot, but it's got one story which I absolutely love and another story which is kind of okay, and that kind of drags Reaper Man down for me. So I'm going to put it in B tier for now, which might seem a little bit stingy, but that's where I'm going to pop it for now. I do like it better than Eric, but probably not quite as much as Moving Pictures. I might move it up into A tier as things go along, depending how generous I'm feeling. Okay, Witches Abroad is the next one. Now, I think this was the first witches book that I read, and I love Witches Abroad. Witches Abroad is basically the story where one of the coven, Margaret, is basically inherits the role of being a fairy godmother, and she then has to go off to Genua, which is, I would say, very analogous to Disneyland. It's, it is this very neat and tidy version of a fairy tale city, but it is in the middle of a large swamp where there's all sorts of, sort of backwater things. There's voodoo and things like that going on in the background there. There's a lot of riffing on fairy tales. If you are a fan of the film Shrek, which I am, then Witches Abroad will be right up your street, because it is that sort of thing of looking at fairy tales, looking at the practicality of those fairy tales, and someone trying to force the fairy tales to their bidding. I believe at one stage Pratchett was working quite closely with Disney. I think there was one of his books that was due to get it was one of the books that was being pitched as an animated book. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I can't remember which one it was. Someone did comment to say that many years ago that they'd actually worked with Disney and said that actually there was in the works something that was going to be one of his films, but never ended up happening. And I got the impression with both Moving Pictures and with Witches Abroad that was Pratchett's response to his time dealing with Hollywood and Disney. And yeah, for that reason, I really love Witches Abroad. And I know it doesn't tend to be high up in most people's lists. I'm going to have to put that up in A tier. I like it better than Weird Sisters, definitely. Do I like it better than Mort? It's a tough one. I think I do. I'm going to leave that at the top of A tier, but that might even nudge into S tier for me. So Alice is saying, I never thought of it as Disneyland, but that makes complete sense now you say it. Yeah, it was. I didn't think of it the first time I was reading it either, but the second time I was reading it, when I was hearing how Genua was described, it felt very Disney. And then when they started talking about the swamp that was outside, it was like, okay, that really does sound like Florida. I can see where they're going with that. Okay, Speed Cycling is saying that he thinks it was Mort that was in negotiations to go at Disney. Yeah, that may well be right. I think that does ring a bell. I think it might have been Mort, all right. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so next one is Small Gods. Oh, this is a very easy one for me because I absolutely love Small Gods. That's going right up into S tier. Do I like it better than Guards? I might nudge these around a little bit. No, I think I prefer Guards to it. I think Small Gods is probably arguably the better book, but Guards is the one that has my heart more, I would say. Small Gods is Pratchett's version of poking fun at organized religion, and I think he does it really deftly, because while he does a great job of parodying the hypocrisy around it, and not just the hypocrisy, but also the violence in the history of religions. So it's about the Church of which is this massively aggressive church in its expansion. Its seat is in the country of Omnia, and Omnia is kind of always invading other countries in order to try and convert people to the Church of And it has huge numbers in the religion who are signed up as being part of the religion, but it seems like they've only got one believer, which is Brother Brutha. This is where I need to be able to write things at the same time. It's Brother Brutha, brother. So but Brother is someone who's kind of seen as not very smart, but he's very smart, because he has this completely photographic memory where he just remembers absolutely everything, and he is the one true believer of the religion. And we know this because tries to come to the world to manifest himself in a physical form in some sort of splendor, and the best he can manage with all the power that he's got, because the power of the gods is based on the amount of belief that they have in them, and all he can muster is to become a tortoise, and he gets stuck in the desert as a tortoise for several years, because nobody is actually praying to and nobody is actually believing him apart from Brutha. So Brutha finds this tortoise who is claiming to be his god, who is petulant and childish and trying to smite people. Well, it's a tortoise screaming that he's trying to screaming about bringing down lightning onto people, and he's barely able to create a little bit of static electricity around them. It is very clever, but it's one of the things I like about it as well is, while he is parodying the organization around religious establishments, I think he's actually very respectful of people who are believers in religion. He's not sort of belittling true believers. If anything, he's just belittling hypocrites who don't actually have any belief, and people who are only involved in those sorts of churches for power and things like that. It's a very, very clever book. It's another one that someone who, if they're only dabbling in the Discworld, could pick up and enjoy. I think it's pretty universal in the story that it's telling. And as far as Discworld lore goes, it's also the book that introduces Lutzi, the sweeper, for the very first time, who's a time agent from the monks of history, who go around and make sure that the past is shepherded into the place that it needs to be. So that is Small Gods, and that is going straight up into S tier. Right. So next we've got Lords and Ladies. This is the next in the Witches book. Structural archaeology. Great introduction. Recommended for yoga teachers. Thank you very much. Okay. So moving on to Lords and Ladies. So Lords and Ladies, at the start, I said that The Light Fantastic is one of the few true sequels in the Discworld stories. Lords and Ladies picks up directly from where we left off at the end of Witches Abroad, where the witches are on their way back to Lancre. And what you get with Lords and Ladies, you get elements of, we're back into sort of Shakespeare territory as well, because there's elements of A Midsummer's Night's Dream in here, because there is this land of the fairies that is breaking through into the realm of reality. And this isn't the first time. This isn't the last time that this that the fairy, the fae, try to come into the Discworld, and the fae in this are basically depicted as childish psychopaths. Who if on an industrial level would pull the wings off of insects. That's what the fairies are like in the Discworld stories. And the version that we get here in Lords and Ladies, yeah, they are those horrible psychopaths who we get to see later on again. The other thing we're getting is the wedding of Margaret to the King of Lancre. And as a result, various different dignitaries are invited to up to Lancre for the first time. And there's a couple of things here. Yeah, a whole lot of Lords and Ladies set up as Nanny Ogg's joke about a stag night. Yeah, there's that. And Nanny Ogg is fantastic in this. I totally agree. We get many renditions of the Hedgehog song as well, which if you don't know what that is, that's the sort of thing that might get me chucked off YouTube for discussing that one. The other thing that you get in it is because the various different dignitaries are invited to the wedding. There is a contingent from Unseen University, and Ridcully, Pondersibbons, and the librarian make their way up to Lancre, and this is sort of a crossover between the witches and the wizards, which I'm going to be completely honest, it felt a little bit fan fiction-y for me. There's a suggestion of the there's a bit of a suggestion that it's no more than a suggestion that Mustrum Ridcully and Granny Weatherwax in their youth were a bit of an item, but they both went their respective ways to become the heads of the magical orders that they became. And I thought it felt a little bit fan fiction-y, and I didn't love it. There's also the return of Kazununda, the dwarf lover from Witches Abroad, and again, I didn't feel that was the most necessary callback either. It's fine. I didn't love it though, and I'm going to say it's going to be C tier for me. It's going to be top end of C tier, I think, because there's enough of Granny Weatherwax and Grebo and all of that to make it really enjoyable. But yeah, it's upper end of C tier, I think. There's bits of it are too fan fiction-y. So we've got Jeff is saying that this is recommended for lovers of Hammer films. I don't necessarily agree with you on that, Jeff. If you want to talk about a witch's book that is for lover of Hammer films, I think you need to hang on till Carpe Jugulum for that one, which is where we get the vampires. So where are we going to next? Next one we're going to is the second of the watch books, and that one is Men-at-Arms. And I make no secret about it. I do love the watch books. Now, Men-at-Arms is one of the things that starts in Men-at-Arms is the watch is expanding. And it is about bringing in new, diverse species into the watch. So you get a dwarf is brought in. You get Detritus the troll, Detritus who we actually first met in Moving Pictures. He is brought into the watch for the first time, and you get Constable Angua as well, who is the most. This is the thing that probably Vimes fought against being in the watch more than anything, and that was a woman. And she's a werewolf as well. But yeah, the woman as well is kind of the big part of it. So and one of the things I think that Men-at-Arms does quite well is it does a whodunit. There's a whole thing about, there is attempts on, there are a number of murders that take place, and it's about who is the person who is responsible. And yeah, as Ellis is saying here, let me just pop your comment up. Men at Arms is an absolute favorite. Really embraces the crime noir elements of the City Watch book. I agree with that. It's a cop story. It is a murder whodunit, and yeah, I love it. I really do love it. Ooh, do I love it enough to put it into S tier though? That is the big question. I'm going to put it at the very top of A tier for now, because I know there's some things that are going into S tier, and I don't want to bulk it up too much. But yeah, Men at Arms is right up at the top of A tier. I love Men at Arms. It's so good. With a dash of Keystone Cops, yeah. And Jeff, a great whodunit with character development. Yeah, totally agree. The City Watch books do a fantastic job of just continuing to improve and just being really great. And they expand. What I like about them is they expand on the cast of characters, and they still give the other characters something to do. Nobby and Fred less so as time goes on, but the cast becomes just a much richer tapestry to me as it goes along. All right, so we're now up to now soul music. Now, in theory, soul music, well, there's a couple of things going for soul music. So the story of soul music is basically the invention of music with rocks in it, as in rock and roll music for the Discworld. And it is also the next one in the Death subseries. So what we know is that Isabel and Mort were married, and they have died, and their daughter, Susan, is now at a girls' school. And after their death is not taken particularly well, Death kind of tries to forget about everything. He tries with alcohol and all sorts of things. And what ends up happening is Susan has to step into the role of Death. She learns about her grandfather for the first time, which is a memory that had been kind of suppressed for her. And she has to step into the Grim Reaping role, into the family business, while the Death is off doing things like trying to join the Clatchian Foreign Legion in order to forget. So there's the music with rocks in it, and there is the Death story. And the Death story, I think, is done very well. The music with rocks in it part, I think, is less successful. I think the characters of the band with rocks in are quite forgettable compared to other Discworld characters. So there's the lead singer who's basically his name is kind of a pun on Buddy Holly, and then there's a dwarf and a troll in it, and I kind of don't even remember their names. I don't remember that much about them, and there's a lot of gags and puns that are based around music, and a lot of them have to go a long way around to try and get to that particular pun. So there's one, forgive me for spoiling one of the jokes, but there's about one of the bands decides that they want to wear leopard skin trousers. So they ended up getting an actual leopard from a traveling circus, but it's still alive. So it's still, so they don't know what to do with it, but they were able to get this leopard cheap because it was deaf, a deaf leopard. The jokes are like that in it, and it's kind of like he's going the long way around to try and shoehorn in band names and things. So even though I love references to music and things like that, hang on, excuse me a second. Sorry about that. Even though I love the idea of the references to music, I don't think it's as successful as Moving Pictures was when it came to movies. So for that reason, soul music, I'm sorry to say, I think soul music, you're going to end up in D tier for me. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it quite so much. It is. Do I like it better than Color of Magic? Yeah, I think I probably do. I definitely like it better than Sorcery. I'll put it at this top end of D tier. So Jeff's saying that as a musician, initially suspicious, but have grown to like it, and there is long-running gag in later books as well. Is there a specific one you have in mind for that one? Okay. So B Cycling is saying, popped out for 5 minutes, came back to find that Men at Arms is not in S tier, now going totally librarian poo. I can see why, and I did deliberate on that one. That's very near S tier, and I might end up bumping it up. I'm going to see how many is left in S tier. I know that there's going to be a few in S tier, so I might bump Men at Arms up, but I'm going to leave it in A for the time being. Okay, right. Moving on, and for the first time in a while, we're back to Rincewind with Interesting Times. And Interesting Times is about the Agatean Empire. It is where Two Flower from the very first two books originated from, and Rincewind ends up there basically to face his crimes as being the inspiration for the revolutionary pamphlet What I Did on My Holidays by Two Flower. Two Flower got back to the Agatean Empire, wrote this treatise on his vacation around the rest of the Discworld, and talked about all of the various different freedoms that places had, and ends up getting thrown in jail as a result of it, and also ends up being dubbed a revolutionary. It's about this oppressive regime, and they at the same time this oppressive version of it's kind of an analog of Imperial China. And what happened with Imperial China is it got invaded by the barbarian hordes, the Mongols, the Genghis Khan, except in the Discworld, it's Genghis Cohen the Barbarian, who rocks up and decides that he is going to, he's tired of just doing raids on various different things and stealing lots of gold and things like that. He's decided he's going to steal an entire kingdom, which is what he's doing in Interesting Times. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed it more the second time round than I thought I would. This one is getting used in an awful lot of politics at the moment. Yeah, it's true. Apparently it's based on an ancient Chinese curse, which basically is to say to someone, may you live in interesting times. So there we are. Yes, and it does turn out that Two Flower is in fact married and has a daughter who is a lot less optimistic about the world than Two Flower happens to be. I liked Interesting Times more than I thought I did. The first time I read it, I thought it was okay. I enjoyed it more the second time around, and I think that was because so many books had passed in the meantime, and it felt like a nice callback to not so much The Color of Magic, but certainly The Light Fantastic, bringing both Cohen and Two Flower back again. And I quite enjoyed it. It's not going to grace my top 10, I don't think, but I'm certainly going to put it in B tier. Now the question is, do I like it better than Eric? Yeah, I think I do like it better than Eric. It's not as good as Reaper Man, but I do like it better than Eric. Okay. Masquerade next. Now Masquerade, that's next Witch's book, and it's Discworld does Phantom of the Opera, pretty much. Essentially, because Margaret's now married, Granny Weatherwax and Stanny Og are now on the lookout for a third in their coven, and the one they have their eye on is Agnes Nitt, who has gone off to the city to become an opera singer, so they go in after her. And it is kind of Phantom of the Opera. It's also a bit of a whodunit as well. And when I first read it many years ago, I found it kind of forgettable because I kind of forgot about it. This time around, I really enjoyed it. I thought the mystery part of it was extremely well done. I thought the idea of the undercover watchman being detritus and Nobby pretending to be opera patrons was hilarious. And there's a scene when the witches are traveling to Ankh-Morpork where they stop in at an inn, and there is a child who is deathly ill. And what ends up happening is it is a kind of a showdown almost of basically between Granny Weatherwax and Death the Grim Reaper. And it's the two of them sitting down in a room. And it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole of the Discworld. So Masquerade went up massively in my estimation when I reread it this time. So, Alice is saying, as a massive Phantom of the Opera fan, this book is brilliant. Yeah, I could see that. You have to consider these novels in their contemporary zeitgeist, relevant themes at the time. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And certainly for Masquerade. I've heard, I know there is some criticism of Pratchett's writing in that one, where, his, one of the YouTubers I love, A Genteel Black Hole, he didn't like the way that Pratchett kind of leaned on the fat jokes with Agnes, and I can kind of see that, but I always felt that Pratchett was kind of an equal opportunities piss taker, because he kind of just took apart everyone's appearances, and it didn't bother me so much. I know it has bothered others. Oh, and yeah, and I also forgot about the fact that it was the Granny spending all of Nanny's money from her book. Yeah, one of the reasons that I had to go to Ankh-Morpork in the first place, I forgot about that, is Nanny Og had written a book, a very, very suggestive cookbook called The Joy of Snacks, and it was. It was credited to being written by a Lancre witch, which kind of implied that Granny Weatherwax had written it, and wasn't best pleased about the whole situation. So yeah, they were trying to get some money in a retraction, and yes, and Granny does a great job of spending all of that money on various different things. So Susan saying agree that it's love the bit with the horses and the stagecoach. Remind me what the bit of the horses at the stagecoach was. I'm not sure what I remember of that. And yeah, just agreeing with B as well. Susan, you're going to have to remind me of the bit of the horses in the stagecoach, because I actually don't think I remember that. Yeah, there is it's a valid point as well that there is a bit of a rant about publishers in that who are getting access to an awful lot of money from sales and not maybe necessarily passing them on to authors. I think that's I think that's a valid one on that. Yeah, so Masquerade. It's going to go into A tier for me. I don't like it as much as Witches Abroad, I don't think. I don't think I like it as much as Mort either. But it is definitely going to go into A tier for me. That was a surprising one, because I did like it. I don't remember it that much the very first time I read it, completely honest. I knew it was Phantom of the Opera, but that was about the size of it. But I really, really enjoyed it this last time I read it. Anyway. Yeah, that was it. That was the bit where there was like, the stagecoach doesn't stop here; it does now. Yeah, it's very much about the witches getting their own way with things. Anyway, so moving along from Masquerade to the next of the City Watch books, and this one is Feet of Clay. So this is the story about another murder mystery in the Watch. Again, more of the noirish things going on. Attempts on the life of Lord Vetinari, and it seems to involve the presence of a golem, the sort of the large clay figures that are brought to life with these spiritual scrolls that are put in their heads. And there seems to be an indication that one of them is responsible, one or others of these golems are responsible for the crimes of for these deaths. Again, City Watch book. It's just, I just love the City Watch books. I really do. I mean, like it's certainly on a par with Men at Arms. I do love Men at Arms. I do like Men at Arms more than Feet of Clay, but Feet of Clay, yeah, it's great, and it expands on the Watch again a bit more. There's also the I don't know, Alice, does that count as a mild spoiler? I'm not certain it does. I won't say any more on that one. The thing about Feet of Clay, the Watch expands again, and this is the first time that we see Cheery Littlebottom for the first time, who is the dwarf who previously all dwarves that we've seen in Discworld have all been presenting as very, very male with, beards and iron boots and chainmail and helmets and things like that. But Cheery is female, still has like the chainmail and the iron boots and the beard and all of that, but wants to now start to get in touch with that feminine side of her and present that feminine side to her to the world a little bit more. Starting to do things like putting on some makeup and things like that. I mean, she's still wearing the chainmail and the iron boots and the beard, but baby steps for the dwarves. Excuse me. Just my favorite watch book, recurring theme, Colin gets covered in shite. Yeah, that is true. I think this actually, as well, it might be the very first. Is this the first one with Boogie Swires? With Wee Mad Arthur. I think this is the very first book that has Wee Mad Arthur, who is known as like a pixie or as like a brownie or a gnome or something like that. But we later find out that he is a member of the Knack McFeagles. So the Feagles from the Tiffany Aching books, the very, very first appearance, technically I think is Feet of Clay, because this is where we see Wee Mad Arthur for the first time. Yeah, Feet of Clay is fantastic. It is great. I'm leaving it in A tier. A's tier is getting a bit crowded. I might have to start bumping some things up into S tier. Okay, moving along. By the way, thanks a million for everyone who's stuck it out so far. My nightmare today, I was absolutely and utterly convinced I was going to get onto this thing and 0 people would attend, and I would just be talking to a camera. I mean, I do that normally anyway, but this time I'd be doing it live on the internet as opposed to being able to just edit out all my nonsense later on. So I'm very, very grateful that you guys have actually joined me on here today. So thank you so much for being part of this. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, Jeff saying that Mad Arthur was the one who was killing the rats for the dwarf market. That is so. Yeah, that was the first one of the Feagles. Yeah, B's confirming that one as well. Thank you very much, you guys. Okay, moving along, and we're on to Hogfather, the next book in the Death series. Might be me stopping being stingy because this is going straight up into S tier. I absolutely love Hogfather. So Hogfather is pretty much about the Discworld's version of Christmas, Hogswatch Night. And the Hogfather himself is the Discworld's version of Santa Claus, who goes around bringing presents for all the nice little girls and boys. And the auditors of reality are at it again, those villains from Reaper Man. And what they are attempting to do is to wipe out the Hogfather. So they employ Mr. Tea Time, or Teatme, as he prefers to be pronounced, from the Guild of Assassins, who is who thinks about the world in a very different way and has considered a way of actually inhuming the Hogfather. And in order to do this, then he's doing that, and there's a whole story about how that's actually happening. But the backdrop to this is that in order to try and keep Hogfather alive, the role is filled by death. So the Grim Reaper, the skeleton, is wearing the big red and white furry outfit, and then going to shopping centers and sitting down and giving children presents. And it is absolutely magical. Susan, his granddaughter, is off attempting to is now out of girls' school and is a governess and is attempting to save the Hogfather, but death is doing the job of the Hogfather, and those scenes are absolutely glorious. And for that reason, I absolutely love the Hogfather. In my video that I did about the best places to start in Discworld, I actually put Hogfather above Mort in the Death series because I think it's a really easy one to identify with, and it is so much fun. And there are bits in it that are genuinely laugh out loud funny. So yeah, Susan saying that it's genius. And that Alice is saying that it's your... So Hogfather was your first read. Excellent. And it gets to S tier. Yeah, I'm keeping it there. I'm happy to stand by that one. Nobby Knobs and the Grotto is pretty spectacular. Yeah. And Susan, the Rat and the Eyeball Obsessed Raven. Yeah, fantastic. Totally agree. And need to revisit I need to revisit Hogfather. I haven't read it as often as some of the others. It's great. It holds up really well. Robin on a card. Yeah, Hogfather holds up so well. I love it. It's really good. Excellent. I appreciate someone quoting this book in an essay in school. Yeah, you have my respect for that one, Alice. Well done. Excellent. Okay, moving along then. So, are we must be around about the halfway point now, I think. How many have we done? So 3, 10, 20. So we've got 20 up here, and I did strata before the page reset. So we've got 20 up here. So we're just about at the halfway point. The next one is Jingo. And so Jingo is a story about how an island pops up in the sea. Sort of a lost city of Atlantis type island pops up in the sea, halfway between Ankh-Morpork and Clatch. Both nations lay claim to it, and anti-Clatchian statements. Clatch is kind of Discworld's version of kind of anywhere sort of Arabian or South Asian is kind of Clatch, and there is a bit of, this is where the anti-Clatch sentiments start to spring up, and we've got the the impending war between Ankh-Morpork and Clatch, and it is down to Sam Vimes. He believes that war is kind of the ultimate crime, and he is determined to stop the war from breaking out. I'm sorry to say this, but this is probably my least favorite of the City Watch books. Now, I mean, like, my least favorite City Watch book is still better than most books I've ever read, but it's I have to say it actually goes into B tier. Now, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Jeff, around Veterinary and the riff on the Gulf War. Yeah, it very much is, and it does sort of do an awful lot of talk about sort of, the churning up of xenophobia as a means to essentially drive a nation to war. It does that very well, and all of those things I like. I think the pointlessness of war riff is done better in Monstrous Regiment. And I also think that as a City Watch book, it it's kind of freewheeling a little bit. Angua and Carrot are still kind of having the same conversations about their relationships as they were back in Feet of Clay, and it does feel like they're kind of freewheeling here. I do agree that 71R Ahmed is a really, really great Discworld character, and ping pong table, yeah, good line. But it is my least favorite of the City Watch book, so it's going into B tier for me. Now, I do like it better than Eric, and I do like it better than Interesting Times. Do I like it better than Reaper Man? Oh, it's on a par with Reaper Man. It's going to be close with those two. I'll leave it below Reaper Man for now. I might do a little bit of shuffling around towards the end. Okay, so moving on to the final kind of solo Rincewind book, and that is The Last Continent. I say kind of solo Rincewind book. Rincewind appears in later books, so he plays a big part in Last Hero, and he plays a minor part in Unseen Academicals as well. And I think he does have a cameo in another one, but I'm not certain which. I think there was one. I'm sure I did see a cameo of him somewhere, but I can't remember which one it's in. But anyway, the last one that's kind of a Rincewind starring one is The Last Continent, but it's kind of half Rincewind and half of the rest of the other half of the book is the rest of the Unseen University faculty, and it's all about Australia. And after the events of Interesting Times, Rincewind finds himself on the continent of 4X, which is the Discworld's version of Australia. And Pratchett basically throws in just about every cultural reference to Australia he can. There's a version of Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert. There's a version of Mad Max. There is versions of, the way that people speak. It is just really, as gags about Australia go, this one is very affectionate towards Australia and also very, very funny as well. And the other part to it as well is because Rincewind is this character who's always running away from danger and things that are trying to kill him. There's this ongoing joke about the fact that all of the flora and fauna in Australia is trying to kill him. So yeah, it is pretty funny. Yeah, and there's the riff on Dreamtime as well. Yeah, and Darwinism, and it is a bit mind-bending. I agree with that as well. And also, I missed that one from B, saying that Jingo's probably the weakest watch book and still fun. Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think Last Continent's a nice send-off for Rincewind. It's the last one where he's really the star of the show, and he's still only sort of half the star of the show. And it's a nice send-off. It's a lot of fun. The story's very strange. It is quite trippy in the way it's done. Okay, do I like it better than Eric? Yes. Do I like it better than Interesting Times? Yes. Do I like it better than Jingo? I'd say no. I'll pop it there, I think. Okay. Now, earlier on, Jeff, I think you said that Lords and Ladies was a good book if you're a fan of Hammer films. I think this is the one to read if you're a fan of Hammer films, and that one is Carpe Jugulum. So on the occasion of Margaret and Verence, the King of Lancre's first child, their naming day, Verence decides to invite dignitaries from lots of different lands, and he invites the family from the family of the Count de Magpère from the land of Uberwald. And Uberwald is kind of it's Hammer Transylvania is what it is. So it's kind of Germanic, it's kind of Eastern Europe, but it's basically Hammer Transylvania. And the last thing you want to do with vampires is invite them in, and he's just invited them into the entire kingdom, which is not the best idea in the whole world. Excuse me a second. Sorry, talking too much. My throat's getting a bit dry. Now, the thing about Carpe Jugulum, I remember when I read it when I originally read it, I wasn't a big fan of it. This time around, I liked it an awful lot more. And one of the things I liked about it was that he leaned into the horror quite a bit, and he made some of the bits. If a Discworld book could be scary, I think there's two that kind of come close to being scary, and I think Carpe Jugulum is one of them. Yeah, agreed. And I liked it a lot. One of the things I really liked in Carpe Jugulum as well is the idea of the teenage vampire daughter who, was going through her teenage phase of wanting to wear bright clothes and stop being called things like Morticia and actually calling themselves things like Annabelle and Gladys and wear bright clothes instead. The whole sort of a riff on teenage goth daughters. It's really quite funny, and it does sort of play with a whole lot of the vampire tropes in it quite well. I liked it a lot, actually. I really did quite like it. So the craving for tea. I think the craving for tea really starts to come in when we start to see the Black Ribboners. Oh, and interestingly, Carpe Jugulum is the first real introduction of the Nac McFeegle. They came out of Uberwald as well. So I think in my original video review, I said that it was Lords and Ladies. When I was reviewing the Wee Free Men, I think I said that Lords and Ladies was the first one that had the Nac McFeegle in it, which was totally wrong. It is Carpe Jugulum. But yeah. I'm not surprised. Every single time I read Pratchett's books, I see new layers of jokes in it. There's daft gags at surface level, but there's some really quite deep historic references in some of these as well. And I'm always so surprised. And there's a lot of linguistic jokes as well, which are based on things like spelling and stuff like that. And I'm always surprised how when I reread, there is always a load more that I missed clearly the first time round. Anywho, so Carpe Jugulum, where am I going to put that one? I think it's going to go B tier as well. B tier is starting to get a little bit crowded. I like it better than Eric, like it better than Interesting Times. I like it better than Last Continent. I might like it better than Jingo, actually, as well. So I'm going to pop it there. Yeah, that seems right at the moment. Okay. And now we get on to the fifth elephant, which, as was pointed out in the chat, sometimes you have to talk about the zeitgeist of the time. The Fifth Elephant is a book that was released about 2 years after the Luc Besson film, The Fifth Element. And the whole story about it is the real... It's about Uberwald, again, from Carpe Jugulum, that land, and what is being mined out of that land is fat that has been mined by the dwarves and is being used for the candles of Ankh-Morpork, and it is really very important to them that they are able to maintain a relationship with the dwarves of Uberwald, especially on the election of the new low king of the dwarves. So this veterinary sends his highest dignitary, the Duke of Ankh, which is Commander Sam Vimes of the City Watch, who is now Duke by married. Excuse me. Sorry, my throat's getting dry again. And there is also a bit of a mystery going on as well, because the dwarves of the Low King have to be crowned on the Scone of Stone, which is a riff on the Stone of Scone, which the British monarchs are crowned on. And that the Scone may or may not be missing. So there's a lot going on in the Fifth Elephant. There's also lots, as well as being sort of Transylvania, there's also elements of ancient of not ancient, but of Russia in there as well. So there's a whole lot of Chekhov references, like the Uncle Vanya and Cherry Orchard and things like that. And it's the first time that we are introduced to Lady Margalotta, the most senior vampire in Uberwald, who has quite a special relationship with Lord Veterinary of Ankh-Morpork. I think, I'm not 100% sure about this, I think this might have been the very first City Watch book that I read. I can't remember if I read Guards before this, but I think I might have actually read Fifth Elephant first. And I have got a very soft spot for the Fifth Elephant. And for that reason, it is going up into S tier for me. Do I like A Bird in Small Gods? Ooh, that's a tough one. No, I don't think I do. But Fifth Elephant is an S tier book for me. Yeah, and that's mostly out of my own nostalgic affection for it. Okay, I'm just going to go back into the comments for a bit because you guys have been typing away as I've been doing this, so let's see what we're up to. So Susan's saying that learned so much from him that the Cable Street, for instance, is a real police event. I did not know that. After reading Carpe Jugulum, would never expected Pratchett to write a vampire who's a sympathetic character, and yet just a couple of books later we meet Otto. Yeah, we do, but we also met Lady Margalotta, who is maybe not sympathetic, but certainly a little bit more morally ambiguous than perhaps the Magpie family was. And Lady Sybil. Yeah, I've mentioned so many of the City Watch books at this point, and I haven't mentioned Lady Sybil, who got introduced in Guards. She's Lady Sybil Ramekin. She is a breeder of swamp dragons, and she becomes the wife of Sam Vimes. And so she is Lady Sybil Vimes now, and that is the reason that Sam is the Duke of Ankh, because she is extraordinarily wealthy, and she is a fantastic character as well. She is just able to, she can just steamroll anyone up to and including Lord Veterinary of Ankh-Morpork. She's great. I agree. And it doesn't look like I'm the only person who agrees. Yeah. Alice agrees with that one as well. And very exciting adventure story, lots of action. I agree. Do you want to know what my biggest bugbear with the Fifth Elephant is? They give away the final act of the book in the blurb. It talks about Sam Vimes being on the run in Uberwald, which doesn't happen until like the last quarter of the book. It's like whoever was publishing blurbs back in the 90s needed to, I don't know, it needed to be smacked around the head, I think. Anyway, moving on. Right. Remember I said earlier on that the very first book that I have, I was very colored, the very first Discworld book that I read, my nostalgia for it is going to color my opinion of it. Well, we've gotten to that book now, and that book was The Truth, which was the very first Pratchett Discworld book that I read. And I'm actually, this is a tough one. Do I go below or above Guards with The Truth? I'm going to go below. So The Truth is establishing a newspaper in Ankh-Morpork, movable type. And we're in a bit of a departure here. We're kind of in a phase of the Discworld where Pratchett was changing things up a little bit. Where we had things before like soul music, and we had things like moving pictures, books like that. Anytime something new from our world, an idea from our world came into the Discworld, what would end up happening is it'd be written out at the end. Usually it would cause, cracks in the walls of reality. The creatures of the dungeon dimensions would be trying to get in, and as a result, we wouldn't have moving pictures anymore, or we wouldn't have rock music anymore. The Truth is the first time, and actually Fifth Elephant really as well, is the first time when a new technology is brought in, and it stays. So in the Fifth Elephant, that's the first time we see the Clax towers, which are the semaphore towers that enable communication across the disc, and which get more and more advanced and more complicated as time goes on. The Clax towers are a big infrastructure thing that is sort of creeps up and expands over time, and which we really start to see a lot of when we get to the likes of Going Postal. The truth lends itself to something just cropping up and going live quite quickly. Excuse me again. Apologies. I keep I'm talking way too much, and I apologize that my voice keeps going a little bit. So the truth is about a writer called, he's kind of a scribe really, called William de Worde, and he comes across the dwarves who have invented this printing press. And what he was doing up until this is he was creating these letters that he would send off to dignitaries in different lands, like Lady Margalotte of Uberwald and King Verence of Lancre. And what he was doing is basically giving them a letter every month or so, where he would talk about the news items that had happened in Ankh-Morpork, and he would get it done by an engraver, printed up, get them sent, and he'd get $5 back from it. He meets these dwarves, and they print. There was an accident happens. They agree to they reprint his letter for him, and he's able to then. But he's able to get it sent off very, very quickly. But not only that, he's able to get many more copies of it done and get it done very, very quickly as well. So it goes from a letter that gets sent once a month to dignitaries, which costs $5, to something that costs $0.01 that can go out every single day that everyone can get a hold of. And it becomes because of a spelling mistake, becomes the Ankh-Morpork Times, because it was originally going to be Ankh-Morpork Items, and someone mixed the I and the T up in there, so it became the Ankh-Morpork Times. And as we tend to get, sometimes there is a plot against Lord Vetinari. And so we get the establishment of journalistic ethics. We also get the establishment of tabloid journalism as well, which is something that's run by Cut My Own Throat Dibbler, who I haven't mentioned much, but is a mainstay of a lot of these books where a new enterprise has come in. He's kind of their resident, I want to say, kind of entrepreneur, conman type person, who's always has a commercial eye on things, but mostly just sells really inedible meat pies to people. So, and I haven't forgotten about this. Such a good idea putting it there. Thank you very much. But there's also Mr. Pin and Mr. Tulip. I love Mr. Pin and Mr. Tulip. One of the things about this is it was written in the 90s, and I read it in the 90s, and it was not long after Pulp Fiction came out, and the Mr. Pin and Mr. Julep have some quite Tarantino-esque dialogue in it as well. And even with the fact that there's swearing done in it, but it's swearing done by just leaving it blank, and he's saying again, it's one that's a written gag. I'm trying to explain it, doesn't work very well. There's also the Mr. Pin and Mr. Tulip. They've got a lot in common with other characters. So if there's any Bond fans in the house, and if you've seen Diamonds Are Forever, there's the two hitmen in that, and whose names have they completely escaped me, but there's elements of them in it as well. There's also in the book by someone tangentially connected with Pratchett, who I will not name. The book is Neverwhere, and there's characters in that that are quite like Mr. Pin and Mr. Tulip. I love them as characters. There's so much going on in this. Go. Thank you, B, for explaining the swearing in it. It's the best. Yeah, and hovering at the number one spot for me. Yeah, it's Oh, okay. I didn't know this. I waited for it for years after one of the Discworld companion books had an entry for William long before the truth came out. Do you know, I haven't read either the Discworld companion books or the Science of the Discworld books. I am going to get to them at some point, but I am kind of taking a bit of a break for Discworld now. As well as that, I'm going to get to Blink at the Screen, which is where the short stories of Discworld are as well. But right now, I haven't read those. So that is interesting. I did not know that that was the case. And yes, there are some great punes or play on words in this one. Terriers. I love the truth. I think it's having read it this time, I think some of the sort of Tarantino-y type things might be a little bit dated, but I don't care. It's harking back to my formative years, so I really don't care if they're dated or not. I think for new readers, it might not rank so highly, but I also don't care about that either. Yeah, Truth is hovering around the number one spot for me in here at the moment. It's very much on a par with Guards. And it depends on what day you ask me. If you ask me the same question tomorrow, I might put the Truth above Guards. Okay, moving on then. We then get to the next one, Thief of Time, and then this is a bit of an end of an era for the Discworld as well, because this is the last one that's that had the cover drawn by Josh Kirby. This artwork style is a bit it's a bit like Marmite. People either love it or hate it. I kind of love his frenetic style, even though it doesn't really convey the characters in the way that Paul Kidby does after him, where he's really taken his cue from what Pratchett has written. I don't think Josh Kirby does, but I still love the art style. And Thief of Time was the last one that he did before he passed away. So Thief of Time is the final one in the Death series, which is kind of sad, actually. I kind of felt that there was more that we could have had with Susan and Death. And this is all about the personification of time and people being able to choose their own destinies. And it's the last one that has the Auditors of Reality in it as well, one of which becomes human. And then there's also the fifth Horseman of the Apocalypse, who left before they became famous as well. And it's kind of... It felt like this is not the first time I'm going to say this, but it felt like unfinished business with this one. I feel like the relationship between Susan and Death hadn't really moved on from Hogfather where it should have. You know, it felt like at the end of Hogfather they'd moved on in the relationship, and it felt like we get back into Thief of Time and we're back at square one. But even still, I do kind of love the Thief of Time. Ooh, am I going S tier? Am I going A tier? I am going to go A tier because I do think I like Men-at-Arms more. I'm tempted to bump Men-at-Arms up into S tier, but I'll leave it there for the time being. So, and yeah, newest covers are very cool in my opinion. I like the color grouping system. I like them as well. I really do like the new covers, but I'm just a sucker for the old ones. I just remember going into bookshops in the 90s and seeing them all lined up on the shelves, and I was like, oh, I'd love to have all of them. And they're really distinctive. There was nothing else that was kind of on the shelves that were like them. I suppose the only thing that was even close might have been sort of the Tom Sharp Wilt books, but you know, that was it. Time to click the other thing I like in Thief of Time as well is it introduces a type of troll called the Yeti, and the Yeti are able to save up part of their lives and go back to it if they get killed. And it's a riff on, because Pratchett was a big video gamer, and that was kind of his way of bringing the video game life systems into the Discworld, which I quite liked. That was quite a nice touch. Anyway. Okay, moving on. We are moving on to the last hero. This is the second of the illustrated books, and this is one that was illustrated by Paul Kidby. And if you have not got the illustrated version of this, it is absolutely gorgeous. Pratchett really did a great job of writing a story that gave Kidby the chance to illustrate so much in the Discworld. He got a wide variety of the characters, from the City Watch to Rincewind to Veterinary to Cohen the Barbarian to all of the gods of the Discworld, to loads of different places in the Discworld, Leonard of Quirm, the Librarian, the artwork in this is absolutely gorgeous. The book itself, it really feels that Discworld is very much evolved, as we've seen from the early days of Color of Magic and Light Fantastic. It is a different world. It started off as a parody of Sword and Sorcery, and what it's turned into is a living, breathing world that is a bit more of a satire of things that happen in our world. But with The Last Hero, it kind of feels like a bit of an homage, a bit of Pratchett's love letter to his earlier self. He revisits earlier things from the Discworld and gives them a chance to just shine and gives them a chance to just say a goodbye, which I kind of love. It's a shorter story. It's a good story. It's not the best. It's definitely A tier for me. And do I like it more than Riches Abroad? Oh God, these are within it. There's a hair of each other. I'm going to put it there, just below Feet of Clay, but I do kind of love The Last Hero. Okay, now we move on to the very first kids' book in the Discworld, The Amazing Morris and His Educated Rodents, which is a riff on the whole Pied Piper of Hamelin. We've got a talking cat and a whole load of talking rats, and they run a con with this young piper called the Kid. I can't actually remember he is actually named as something later on, but I can't remember what his name is. And we have yeah, I'm going to throw that. Susan, I totally agree with you on that one. It's so much richer than diverse. We've gone from double egg and chips to a full Sunday lunch. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with double egg and chips. I like double egg and chips, but it's more of a culinary masterpiece now than it was. So Amazing Morris, one of the things in Amazing Morris, there's it gets very dark. For his first kids book, he tells one of the darkest stories that he has that he's ever told in this. I think the only thing that's kind of sets it out from being as being a kid's book is he tones down on the profanity and sexual content in it, which are minimal in the Discworld to begin with. It's a little bit of innuendo and some very mild swearing. Those are gone. And the other nod he gives to it being a kid's book is he lets the kids have chapters, which he didn't let the grown-ups have. And his view is that, if an adult is reading this to a child, then, they have to have a place where they're going to stop. Otherwise, the child will never go to sleep. Which, yeah, as a parent, I wholeheartedly agree with. But there's some serious darkness in The Amazing Morris. If you've never actually read it, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I don't know if everyone here has read all of the Discworld books, but I'm not going to spoil The Amazing Morris because it goes to some dark, dark places. There is also what is the name? My memory is gone, but there is the female character who has these sort of romanticized versions of what mystery stories need to be about. And what she reminded me of, very recently I read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, and she reminded me of Tom Sawyer, who was trying to force his notion of adventure stories onto everybody else around him. I found him insufferable. I found the character whose name is just gone from my memory. If anyone remembers, please shout it out in the chat because it's gone from my memory. But it's quite endearing in her. Yeah, Amazing Morris goes to some dark places and really quite enjoy it, and it is a good kids book. It's not A tier for me. It is B tier. I probably like it better than Jingo. Do I like it better than Carpe Jugulum? Do you know something? I think I do. Yeah, I'm gonna give Amazing Morris. I actually think I like it better than Reaper Man, the book that actually gave the name to the Amazing Morris. Yeah, I'm gonna put it up at the top of B tier. Okay, right. Next, Night Watch. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know there'll be no surprise here. But Night Watch, straight to the top of S tier. Night Watch is, without any shadow of a doubt, my favorite City Watch book, and it's my favorite Discworld story. Night Watch is shit. Oh, bugger. I thought that the stream had ended there, but it seems like it's still going raw right here. Anyway, sorry. So Night Watch is my very, very favorite of the Discworlds. It's the story of Sam Vimes being sent back into his past to a formative event that happened years before. If you know, you know. It is what happened at that time was that he is chasing a killer called Carpe, and the events of Thief of Time cause a large discharge at the high energy magic building, and Vimes gets sent back in time, and Vimes ends up, when Carpe gets there first, he kills the mentor of young Sam Vimes. And this is like set 20, 30 years earlier. And so old Sam has to step in to the shoes of his mentor and be the mentor to the young Sam Vimes. It's a bit of a time travel story. It's a bit of an origin story for some of our characters as well. It's got less gags in it than a lot of the Discworld books. So it's less overtly funny, and it has at times quite a dark tone to it, but I absolutely love it. It is wonderful, wonderful book. I don't think there's any coincidence that that's the book that Penguin chose as the very first Discworld book to go into their modern classics. You know, their sort of their prestigious collection. And I don't think it'll be the last Pratchett book that ends up in there, but I can see why Night Watch has ended up there. I love Night Watch. It is my favorite. It's probably the one I've reread the most. Because it's and I know it's the one my brothers reread the most. It's our happy place, you know. It's that's our comfort blanket read. So Susan saying that suggest to look up Cable Street and that's another dimension to the story. I will do that. Thank you very much. And top tier, extraordinary book about time travel and resolution. Agreed. And love the Shonky Shop. I do as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an easy one for me. S tier. Top of S tier all the way. Love Night Watch. Okay, so we're moving on to the very first of the Tiffany Aiken. If you know, you know. Moving on to the very first of the Tiffany Aiken books, The We Free Men. So this is another of the YA books for Pratchett out of the Tiffany Aiken series, and Tiffany is a young witch. She's introduced here aged 9, and she's already got a very Granny Weatherwax view of the world. She's got, she sees the world for as what it is rather than what people perceive it to be. And it is the second time that we get a back to Night Watch, but yes, absolutely. The second time that we get an incursion from the Queen of the Fairies. And this time, Tiffany is the one who stands in her way. She goes into the realm of the fairies in order to retrieve her little brother who the Queen of the Fairies has stolen. But she doesn't have to do it alone. She is accompanied by the Knock McFeagle, the Wee Free Men, the Pixies, as in P-I-C-T-Cs, not P-I-X-I-E-S. So the Picts were like this tribe of Scots, violent tribe of Scots. So, yeah. And the Wee Free Men are the Feagles are hilarious. They like fighting, stealing, and drinking in that order. And she finds herself to end up being the inadvertent lady chieftain of their clan when the old Kelda, the old chieftain lady, dies, but it's only as a temporary measure until they get a new one. But it introduces the character of Tiffany really well. I was relatively ambivalent towards the Tiffany Aching books, if I'm honest with you, when I was first reading them. But reading them now this time around, I enjoyed them an awful lot more. And I have to say, We Free Men's a really good introduction to it. I liked it a lot. I don't know if I'd quite go up into A tier for it. I think it's probably high B tier. And I do like it better than Amazing Mars. Do I like it better than Moving Pictures? Should it go into A tier? Ooh, I don't like it more than Weird Sisters, but I'm okay. Executive decision. I'm going to put it into A tier. I think it's a really great start for the story. Apparently, it's a book that has started Ellis's obsession with folklore as well. Monstrous. Susan says A tier. Yeah, okay. You've convinced me. I've gone A tier. Monstrous Regiment. This, I think, out Jingo's Jingo when it comes to war. I really liked Monstrous Regiment an awful lot. It's also a riff on the story of the archetype of the young woman who cuts her hair to join the army to protect to protect a man in her life who she loves. In her case, it's her brother. And I'm not going to say any more than that, because if you've read it, you know where this is going. If you know what the title's a reference to, you know where it's going. But if you don't know either of those things and read the book, how that unfolds is brilliant. It is an extremely original riff on that idea, and I kind of love it. And one of the other things I really quite love about this is it brings Sam Vimes into it, but it's Sam Vimes. Another book that does that is The Truth as well, but this is where most of the Watch books, we see Sam Vimes from the perspective of Sam Vimes, who is doing the right thing that needs to be done. From the outside, Sam Vimes is seen as a bit of an authoritarian and a bit of a bully, which he kind of is. And it's interesting seeing external people looking at Sam Vimes as well. And I like it an awful lot. I again, it was one that when I read it first, I was like, okay, that's quite good. But when I reread it this time, I really liked it. I thought it was excellent. And it has a fantastic cast in it. Especially considering these are one and done characters. We don't see most of them again, but they're all very well rounded. They all have very much their own personalities, and I liked it a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I don't think I'll put it in S tier, but I'm definitely going to put it in A tier. And do I like it more than Free to Play? I'm going to put it between Last Hero and Free to Play for now. But yeah, it's definitely A tier for me. Let's just nip into the comments and see what we've got. So Jeff's talking about drinking, violence, and breeding, and lots of threat. Yeah, that is the We Free Men. Totally agree on that one. B saying, brother is also a fan. Can't wait for his granddaughter to be old enough to start reading the Tiffany books so he can make her one of us. Yeah. One of us. Yeah, we need more. It is a good contrast regarding religion to Jingo. Yeah, it is. I actually prefer, as the anti-war books in the Discworld, I prefer Monstrous Regiment to Jingo, definitely. And yes, it is all about coffee in the end. That's a big part of it. Also love it when Vimes pops as a guest star in non-watch books, so we get a new perspective. Yeah, I agree. I just like the fact I like seeing him through others' eyes, because from the perspective of other people, like the characters in Monstrous Regiment, like William de Ward in The Truth, and like Moist van Lipwig in some of his books. Moist. They look at Vimes and they see an authoritarian and a bully and a bit of a fascist, really, and they're not wrong, but they haven't got the perspective of being inside Vimes's head like we do to know that that's, you know, he's his intentions and things, I suppose. And yes, Sergeant Jackrum is a very memorable character. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I love that character. Okay, right, moving on. We're in kind of the home stretch now. So next we're going to go with the second in the Tiffany Aching books, which is A Hatful of Sky. And this is, yeah, I like this one a lot. This actually brings in Granny Weatherwax into the Tiffany Aching stories a bit. Do I like it enough for A tier? Again, this is hovering at the top of B tier for me, bottom end of A. Do you know something? I'm feeling really generous. A tier is getting a bit crowded, but I am going to stick it in A tier. I think Hatful of Sky is really strong, and I actually like it, I think, better than The Wee Free Men. I think what Pratchett did very well before bringing the rest of the Witches cast in to the Tiffany Aching books, he gave Tiffany the chance to live and breathe as her own character first. So, we didn't have Granny Weatherwax at the start because, both in personality and in character, she would steamroller everything and be, the center of attention. And he was smart enough to give Tiffany time to grow on her own before putting her up, sort of getting her sort of butting heads directly with Granny Weatherwax. And this is the first time when we really get to see her with Granny Weatherwax properly. There was a cameo at the end of We Free Men, but yeah, this was, I enjoyed this. Oh, interestingly, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but there are 2 Discworld books where the character of Death doesn't pop up. I didn't realize until I did this reread, but there are actually 2 of them. And I'm not going to say what they are. If you want to have a guess in the comments as to what those 2 are, I'll let you know towards the end. Remind me to let you know towards the end because I've got memory like a sieve. Okay, so Hatful of Sky is essentially where Tiffany's starting to come into her powers and actually invites in a something called a hiver, which is kind of this collective consciousness, this sort of parasitic collective consciousness, and ends up going in and taking over. It's very Exorcist at times, but it's it's quite a dark one and quite a creepy one as well, with the possession that Tiffany ends up with. But that part of the story ends, and then there's a little bit of a confrontation part with Granny Weatherwax as well, and it's a strong one. I like Hatful of Sky a lot. Oh, we've got some guesses on this. So hang on a second. First of all, we progressed from isolated witches to a countryside teeming with them. Yeah, that's true. To be fair, I think when we got to Witches Abroad, there was a lot of other covens from around the place that were there. There was talk of a lot of other witches around Lancre. Equal Rites, we only had the one, and then Weird Sisters, you only had the 3 of them. But there was a much wider collection of the witches. I think that what they refer to, the collective noun for witches, is an argument, I believe, according to Terry Pratchett. But there is a bigger argument of witches when it gets to when we get on to Witches Abroad. So we have a guess here: Raising Steam and Monstrous Regiment. Interesting guesses. They're not right, but they're interesting. And was it The Amazing Morris and maybe The Wee Free Men? One of those is correct. I'll tell you that much. Okay, moving on. So then we get to the very first Moist Fun Lip-Fic book, Going Postal. I have a bit of a confession to make. When I read Going Postal first, I wasn't a fan. I actually didn't like it very much. And I was kind of frustrated that we ended up getting more Moist Fun Lip-Fic books, to be honest. But I reread it this time, and I actually liked it an awful lot more. I think what I liked about it this second time around was, aside from... Going Postal is a story, Moist Fun Lip-Fic, con man who is given the choice by Veterinary. He can either finish getting hanged or take over the job of Postmaster General to start the post office running again, because Veterinary is annoyed by the way that the Clacks company has now got no competitors, and as a result are taking liberties and increasing prices and reducing the service. I liked Going Postal an awful lot this time around, and I can kind of see what the fuss is, and I can see why a lot of people, this is an ideal starting point for them. I've come around to Going Postal, and I have to say it hits A tier for me, and it gets pretty high in A tier. I liked it a lot. I think it's the best of the Moist Fun Lip Fic books. I don't think the other two are as good, but it's pretty damn good, I have to say. So Lancre allows witches, just don't tell Granny, whilst the other lands, they are covert. Yeah, that is true. Especially in the chalk, where they don't really accept witches at all, and that comes across a lot in the We Free Men and Hatful of Sky, because it's all about the you've got Mystique, the who's kind of their witch finder, who's gone around from village to village trying to find girls that are that might have the gift. Yeah, I agree. The Hiver is a scary monster for children. He goes really dark in his kids' books. I don't know what it is. It's he's not afraid to go to some dark places with those ones. And I think it helps to consolidate Ankh-Morpork. Nicely plotted and paces. Yeah, I agree. It does. I assume you're talking about Going Postal in that one. Yeah, it really does. It really does. We start to hear more about the golems in that one as well, because Adorabelle Deerheart, the love interest from Moist Fun Lip Fic, is the head of the Golem Trust, which is following on from Feet of Clay. Golems are working to liberate all other golems. They are getting paid, and they're using those wages to purchase other golems to liberate them, so more of them can get paid, and so on and so forth. It's really quite good. Going Postal illustrates the concept of enshittification long before the term was coined. Yeah. The post office was kind of in a bit of a state before they got Moist to take over it. It really was. Right. So moving on. Thud, the second to last of the City Watch books. This is Sam Vimes again trying to stave off war between the trolls and the dwarves, based on the fact that actually one of the sort of fundamentalist dwarves, it seems, has been killed. I remember reading Thud the first time and thinking, yeah, that's pretty good. And I read it this time and I thought, actually, that is really quite good. I liked Thud an awful lot, and I don't think it goes into S tier, but it's certainly that top end of A tier. And what it does as well is it does set up some of the other things that are coming for the dwarves as well, where there's a lot of fundamentalist dwarfs, a community within a community, who are trying to go back to more traditional dwarfish values, which starts off as little bit of violence in the streets here, and then by the time we get to Raising Steam, actually escalates into full-on terrorism. He put terrorism in the Discworld. There's nothing that man wouldn't touch. Okay. Oh, and yes, of course. Where's My Cow? Again, another book that was tangential to Discworld is the children's book, Where's My Cow?, which Sam has to read to his young son Sam every single night. And it is it shows Sam's commitment as a parent, and it is just lovely to behold. And it plays a major part of the plot. But yeah, the Where's My Cow aspect of that, yeah, it's great. I also love when Sam starts to improvise bits of Where's My Cow, including characters like Cut My Own Throat Dibbler and Foul Old Ron. Yeah, that gets great. Okay. We're into the last few now. Making Money. It was fine. To me, it was a bit of a retread of what we'd already had in Going Postal. It was okay. Didn't it was I liked the villain in Making Money. I think the villain was this villain who was obsessed with veterinary to the point where he wanted to be veterinary. But other than that, I wasn't a huge fan of Making Money. It was okay. Probably liked it better than Pyramids, but that's about it, if I'm going to be honest. Wintersmith, which to me is, I do agree with that, Jeff. I did quite like the dog. Yeah. Who inherited the bank. That was funny. I did like that. Okay, moving on to Wintersmith, which I have to say is my least favorite of the Tiffany Aching books. It's fine. It introduced it. There was the whole the Dark Morris dance was an interesting thing. Apparently, at some point, some people actually went in and did a Dark Morris dance at one of his book signings. They went in complete silence, wearing black, and did this eerie dance around him, and then left. Apparently, it was very, very weird and creepy. But no, Wuffles. Wuffles is Veterinary's dog. The dog in Making Money was Mr. Fusspot, if memory serves. That's getting properly nerdily into the weeds to be able to distinguish between the two different little dogs that have positions in power in Ankh-Morpork. And yeah, very valid point that Making Money, a book about the banking crisis before the actual banking crisis. Valid point. Yeah, agree on that one. I like the idea of him sort of introducing paper money as well. His way of trying to redo it because the stamps had become the de facto currency, and he just wanted to redo that, pull that same trick. That was good, but I did kind of feel it was retreading the ground from Going Postal and didn't like it as much. Anyway, sorry, moving on. Wintersmith would be my least favorite of the Tiffany Aching books. It's fine. It's a decent enough sequel. I don't think I think it's the most forgettable story-wise. I don't think doesn't feel like much happens in that one. So yeah, it goes relatively low down in B tier for me, I have to say. And of course, Gaspard. Yeah, I don't think he was necessarily in a position of power, except in the Beggars Guild. Yeah, I don't have much to say about Wintersmith. Actually, it didn't. Yeah, there isn't much other than the interesting thing about the Dark Morris dance. Personification of Winter falls in love with Tiffany and starts following her around, and basically acts like a teenage boy who doesn't know how to talk to girls properly. It was fine. It was fine. Okay. Unseen Academicals. I'm sorry to say this one's going into D tier. There's some really interesting things in Unseen Academicals. There is Mr. Nut, and who originally says he's a goblin but may not actually be something else. That implies something really interesting about how the Discworld could have expanded and included more things and had more history to it. The actual football game is the early game before it's regulated in this. So this is basically football in the Discworld. So there is a football game which is what football used to be before it was it had rules and a football association and all of that sort of thing, which was basically in the streets two opposing teams of indeterminate number and would be played across vast quantities. If you ever get the chance, there is some documentaries online. There is a town in Derbyshire called Ashbourne, and they play a game on Shrove Tuesday every single year. It's called the Shrovetide game, and it is a throwback to what football really was right from the right from the early days. I'd encourage you. There's a documentary somewhere. I can't find it, but I remember many years ago I saw it called Wild in the Streets. But there is some other ones on YouTube as well, and it is absolutely fascinating. That side of things, that historical side of things, is fascinating. The other side of football, I'm afraid this might be sacrilege to a lot of people, but I have no interest in football at all. I really just genuinely don't care. So him bringing football into the Discworld, there was a lot, he brought football in, which meant he needed to bring star football players in, which meant he needed to bring in footballers' girlfriends in, which means if he needed to have footballers' girlfriends, he needed to have a fashion industry so there could be models. And all of that is brought into this, and it's kind of a whole lot of stuff I really didn't care about. And the problem with Unseen Academicals is it's the longest Discworld book by quite a wide margin. It's much longer than any of the others, and I just really wasn't that interested. There's some things in it that I like, but it is the longest Discworld book, and it kind of felt like it was as well. So for that reason, it's staying down in D tier for me. Okay, moving on to I Shall Wear Midnight. Okay, so I Shall Wear Midnight. Pratchett. Okay, Pratchett did not care for it either. That may well be true, but he wrote about it a lot. So, and the wizard's training and playing is pretty funny, but not keen on the rest. I agree with that. I also like the idea that they brought in a professor of necromancy as well, who is, has a skull ring and a widow's peak and does all the dastardly things that one would expect a dark wizard to be doing, because it's written in his contract, and that's quite funny. Okay, moving on. I did not know that. B, that's some real Morris teams have started dancing the Dark Morris. That's creepy and weird, but I love the fact that they're doing it, because that is a direct riff to Terry Pratchett and riff on Who Ate All the Pies. I wasn't a fan of Unseen Academicals. It's fine, but that's about it, and it's too long. It's way too long. I Shall Wear Midnight. So this is kind of this and the Shepherd's Crown is kind of Witches Avengers, where they all come in. We get to see Escarina Smith again for the first time in a while. There's a whole... when I've said some of them have gone to dark places, this went to this is one of the kids' books. This is one of the YA books. And in the opening chapters, we have got a story of a teen pregnancy where she loses the baby as a result of her drunken father kicking the hell out of her. And then the rest of the town arrive with the intention of lynching him. This is a kid's book, and that's chapter 2. He goes to some dark places in his kids' books. And I Shall Wear Midnight goes to a really dark place. And it's all about the sort of the anti-witch sentiment that starts to kick in and is then personified. We see Escarina Smith for the very first time since Equal Rites, and that's nice to see her again. And the other witches, of course, too. But this is very much Tiffany's story, and Tiffany, how she's dealing with it. Tiffany goes to Ankh Morpork, which is great. So she gets to meet some of the characters in like the City Watch as well. And the general consensus is who brought Feagles into our city, which I kind of love. And then I love the fact that the wee free men, the Feagles, get the living daylights kicked out of them by wee Mad Arthur, who then gets in touch with his Feagle heritage. And the McFeagles rebuilding the King's Head pub, but building it the wrong way around, so the King's Head now is called the King's something else instead. That's pretty hilarious too. I like I Shall Wear Midnight a lot. I think it's a strong one. I don't know. I don't think I prefer it to Hatful of Sky, but I do think I prefer it. Do I prefer it to Hatful of Sky? That's a tough call, actually. They're very close to each other, I think. I'm going to leave it there for now. I might revisit these at the end to see if there's anything that's glaringly obvious that I should be moving out of things, but I'll take it from there. Right, Raising Steam. The last, no, it's not, shouldn't be Raising Steam next. It should be Snuff next. The last in the City Watch books. And this is about Sam Vimes going off to the country and ends up solving a mystery. And there is a solid. There's a real sense of the sort of Victorian Edwardian novel of, you know, people's and earlier as well, sort of almost like the Austens and the Brontes and things like that, of the rich old stately home, and then going and visiting various different people around it, and a mystery coming up around it. It's got a bit of Wilkie Collins to it as well with that. There's the way that the goblins are described in this, the pathos around them, especially at the start, I found genuinely heartbreaking. I actually, at the start of Snuff, I thought it was making its way to be my favorite watch book. I think the last third of it probably lets it down. I think the antagonist that they introduce and the way I don't think he sticks the landing with Snuff at all. It's still a solid one. I don't think I'd give it A tier. I think if I was splitting it out, the first half of it is absolutely A tier. And also, I like the riff on the Bennett sisters, who become the Gordon sisters, which is a riff on Pride and Prejudice, which I also read recently, if anyone has seen my video on that. I'm not a big Jane Austen fan, it transpires. And I think Sam Vimes has a very similar attitude towards the uselessness of the Bennett sisters that I did. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, Stuff was good, but it didn't stick the landing for me. And a valid point. Yeah, so the Summoning Dark was a holdover from what happened in Thud, which is basically a dark entity, very similar to the Hiver in Hatful of Sky, which basically is this sort of dark entity that buries itself inside of Sam Vimes. But unlike Tiffany, who expels this darkness from her, Vimes kind of embraces it, and basically has the copper equivalent of staring it down and using it when he needs to. It's some dark stuff in it. I do like Snuff, but should it be A tier? I don't know. There's A tiers looking very, very crowded. I'll think about that one. B, I totally agree. You can go very dark with literature. Yeah, Pratchett did not underestimate that at all. Alrighty, and it's the final two now. We've got Raising Steam, which is the final Moist on Lipfric book, and I liked it, I have to say. It's Snuff, Raising Steam, and The Shepherd's Crown. Oh, and I Shall Wear Midnight. Those four were the only ones I had not read at all by the time I got to for this reread. So all of the other books I'd read before, a lot of them I'd read multiple times before, but I'd never actually read those last four books. I'd intentionally avoided them, to be perfectly honest, because I hated the idea of getting to the end of The Shepherd's Crown and never having another new Discworld book to read ever again. And I'm not going to lie, that was bloody hard as well. So Raising Steam, this is a recent read for me, and it was a very first read on this as well. It's an interesting one because it's another instance of bringing something new into the Discworld that lets it expand and have something else in it with the Railway. But you can't do with the Railway what you did with newspapers. Newspapers, if you've got paper and a printer, you can send out newspapers. Railway needs manufacturing and infrastructure in order for it to work. So a lot of this book is about Moist setting up the infrastructure for the railway business. And, it kind of is a bit of a story about compulsory purchase orders at times. Where it becomes really, really interesting where you've got it's starting to clash with the dwarves, and that's where the dwarf terrorism starts to creep in. There's also Yeah, there's some interest, and the end point to this, when it's the importance of actually getting it. Yeah, again, it feels like the sort of P.T. Barnum type story where it's this great race that has to take place where the train has to get up into Uberwald as quickly as possible. I liked that part of the book as well. I also liked the fact that Moist and Sam Vimes started to get more of a begrudging respect to each other. And I kind of liked that at the end of this, he gave a bit of a goodbye to Sam Vimes. The last scene with Sam in the Discworld and in this book is Sam going home to his wife and son. And I kind of like that. There was some things that were introduced in this which felt like it was going to expand the world even further. There was the gnomes up in the mountains, and it felt like that this was a new species that was going to be brought in and talked about. I talked about this in my videos about this, but it really, it felt like there was a lot of ambition he still had for the world that was kind of unresolved. And I think a lot of these last few books, they felt it. There's a bit of a debate going on as to whether, well, it's a debate going on in my head and in my comment section mostly, to be perfectly honest. But obviously, Pratchett's illness and the Alzheimer's, which is one cruel son of a bitch of an illness, it was having an effect on his writing, where a lot of it was the heavy lifting was starting to having to be helped with his assistant and his daughter in order to try and make it work. I felt that they weren't as polished. That is definitely the case with The Shepherd's Crown, but I also think even you can go back as far as probably Unseen Academicals, and it maybe even further back, and it doesn't have the same level of polish that it did. But I think part of that was there was an element of rush. I think there was a lot of the Discworld that was still in his head that hadn't gotten out on paper that he was rushing to get out there. And I think it's great that it's out there, but I think that the books kind of suffer from it a little bit as well. And Raising Steam is one of those where, he got to put some ideas out there, but it ended up rushing them a little bit as well. It's decent. It's going to go, I do prefer to making money in the Moist von Lipwig books. I don't think I'm going to put it somewhere around just above Jingo, I reckon. I think, yeah. Need to reread the final few books. I definitely think you can see where his illness start to take its toll, which doesn't make them bad, but makes them sad. I completely agree with that. And here we are. We've gotten to the end, and the final one, The Shepherd's Crown. When I gave my review of this, I gave this a 4-star review, and I think that was very generous. It's objectively unfinished. There's bits that are... There's some... Again, there's ambition in it. There's things like, doing the reversal of equal rights and having a young man who wants to learn witchcraft because that's more suited to his temperament. We get kind of an Avengers of the witches where they all come to face off against the Queen of the Fairies again. And then I try not to spoil it for people on this one. I don't know how to talk about this one without talking about the elephant in the room of this, the loss that we do at the start of it. And when I say it's at the start, it kind of is 2/3 of the book is dealing with that loss and the implications of it. And the story about the fairies and all of that is very, very rushed and happens at the end. There's there is where Tiffany takes in the Queen of the Fairies as a refugee because she is ousted in a coup in her own lands. And her empathy, she starts to develop empathy by seeing what Tiffany does, but it happens way too quickly, and I don't think it really works like it should. He writes a battle scene in it as well. He writes actual battle that takes place, which I don't think I think he kind of did that in Interesting Times a little bit, but he doesn't really do battles in this. But there's actually he has ambition for the Discworld still, and I mean, we knew that he had stories that were unfinished and that ended up going through a bulldozer because he didn't want other people to step in and do them, and rightly so, because I don't think anyone could. And I think Shepherd's Crown is touch and go as to whether it ended up under the bulldozer or not. I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad we got it out there. I'm glad I read it. I think, as I said, it's objectively unfinished, but the emotional gut punch you get in this, it feels like a goodbye to the world in some ways, even though there's ambition there for further, but you do get a really good goodbye. And I'm not a weepy person. I'm pretty hard-faced, but the scene in the Shepherd's Crown, yeah, that got me. I don't think I can put it any higher than B tier. I'm debating putting it in C tier. It's not a great book objectively, but what's good in it is fantastic. But there's a lot that's not good in it. So I think I'm going to have to genuinely put it in C tier, with the caveat that there are bits of it that are A tier, or actually probably S tier. So let's have a look at this. This is my full tier list for the Discworld. At the top, we've got Night Watch, followed by Guards, The Truth, Hogfather, Small Gods, and The Fifth Elephant in S tier. In A tier, do you know what? Men at Arms, I'm giving you A tier. I'm giving you S tier status. I think you deserve it. Thief of Time. So Men at Arms in S tier as well. Thief of Time, Thud, Feet of Clay, Monstrous, Regiment, Going Postal, Last Hero, Witches Abroad, Mort, Masquerade, Weird Sisters, Hatful of Sky, I Shall Wear Midnight, The Wee Free Men, and Moving Pictures in A tier. That's a crowded A tier. B tier, Snuff, Amazing Morris, Reaper Man, Carpe, Jugulum, Raising Steam, Jingo, Last Continent, Interesting Times, Wintersmith, and Faust / Eric. And then in C tier, Shepherd's Crown, Lords and Ladies, Equal Rights, Making Money, Pyramids, Light Fantastic. And in D tier, Unseen Academical, Soul Music, The Color of Magic, and Sorcery. I feel like I'm being a bit harsh on Color of Magic. Yeah, it had to do a lot of heavy lifting, and yeah, it's very, very embryonic. Does it do enough to justify going into... It's going to go higher up in D tier anyway, I know that much, but I think it... I don't know if I'll put it in C tier. I'll leave it where it is. So, just to go through the comments on there, yeah, introduction of death to younger readers. He's not shy, doesn't shy away from that one. Oh, speaking of which, the one guess that was correct that didn't have death in it was The Wee Free Men, but there is one other book. I'll give you to the end of these comments to guess. So that yay, I think, is for Men at Arms making its way up. When done, Mark, you did it. I have done it. Thank you very much. And people actually arrived here for it, which I'm delighted. It was a steamroller, not a bulldozer to squash his hard drive steel. Yes, steamrollers are objectively funnier than bulldozers. I completely agree. Yeah. Woohoo, Men at Arms, where it belongs. And I think, go and have a slice of dwarf bread. As they say, no one ever goes hungry when they've got dwarf bread to avoid eating. So, the final book that did not have death as a character is Snuff. Interesting. Didn't spot it. I didn't realize that until after I'd read it. And I was like, wait a second. Death hasn't shown up in that one. Yeah, so the two books that don't have the Grim Reaper in it are Snuff and The Wee Free Men. So there's a little bit of trivia for you. Next time there's a Terry Pratchett pub quiz, you can pull that one out and answer a question. I wanted to say thanks very much for actually showing up. I have been the entirety of today terrified of the notion that I would be sitting here talking to myself for 2 hours. Not that I wouldn't have done it, because, that's kind of what I do anyway with this. But doing it live was a horrific prospect for me. And the fact that you guys have showed up genuinely makes me happy. So thanks a million for this. It gives me lets me think that actually I'll probably do another live stream at another point. I'll have to have a think about what that's going to be, but I will do this again. Thank you for showing up, and for everyone who's commented on it as well, and for those of you who haven't commented, thank you, just for being here. I really appreciate it. All of you, enjoy the rest of your weekend. If you're here in the UK like me, it is really hot, and I am ready to stop and have a drink now. And I just want to say again, final time, thanks a million for that. And this is just final few comments. Glad you enjoyed it, Ellis. And yes, do your own reread. I highly recommend it. It's worth doing. And use it as a jumping off point to start a YouTube channel. I recommend that as well. So that's it. Thanks again. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.